They called it a warning. A sleek, obsidian-colored probe drifted into Earth's orbit, pulsing with eerie blue light. It hovered in silence for 3 hours. Then, with a flash that blinded half the satellites in low orbit, it spoke in every major human language. To the primitive inhabitants of Planet 323A, you will cease expansion beyond your solar system. The Galactic Empire does not negotiate. You will not be warned again. The message repeated on a loop for 5 straight days, broadcasting across every frequency, from military channels to underground pirate streams. News anchors debated it. Scientists panicked. Governments scrambled to decode its origin. But it was already too late for that. The probe wasn't a threat. It was a flex, a massive one. The Empire had seen enough. Humanity had stepped too far, too fast, and now someone upstairs had decided it was time to put the upstarts in their place. And Earth had other ideas. Inside a war room deep beneath the surface of Iceland, a group of military brass, scientists, diplomats, and one very tired logistics officer stood in front of a holographic table, staring at the probe's signal as it flared on the screen. The room was quiet, tense. Then someone snorted. "Is this for real?" she said, crossing her arms. "They send us a floating light bulb and think we'll roll over." Someone else chuckled. Another joined in. Then laughter began to fill the room, low and bitter at first, then louder, deeper, like pressure being released from a valve. They laughed because the fear had already burned out. Humanity had grown up on stories like this. Aliens conquering Earth, empires demanding surrender. But unlike the stories, this wasn't the beginning of a disaster. This was the beginning of a grudge. The logistics officer, Tan, leaned forward and tapped the interface. "The Third Fleet is already in position near Neptune. The Fifth Fleet is fueling up on Titan. The Ark-class ships just finished trials. We've got 3 weaponized AI cores cleared for deployment. We're ready." One of the older generals raised an eyebrow. "You want to fight them?" "No," Tan replied, his voice dry. "I want to make them regret picking us." For the first time in its long and tyrannical history, the Galactic Empire had spoken to a species that didn't tremble. A species that had fought itself for thousands of years and was still standing. One that had turned its own planet into a graveyard of fallen empires and now had its eyes on the stars. Earth didn't just respond. It howled back. Within a week, the fleets were mobilized. Ships shaped like daggers, beasts, towers, each built by different nations, each with their own scars and style, gathered into a formation that stretched across the black. Crews were loaded, soldiers prepped. The message was clear: we don't kneel. On the edge of the Kuiper Belt, where sunlight barely kissed the hulls of human vessels, the Empire sent another ship, a scout frigate, sleek and silver, with no visible weapons. It glided toward the Third Fleet, sensors active, engines humming. Humanity didn't shoot first. Instead, the admiral in command opened a line. "Message from Earth," he said with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Your warning has been received. Consider this our reply." The transmission was short, a recording of the Empire's original threat, followed by the sound of hundreds of human officers laughing. Deep, mocking, fearless laughter. Some pounded tables. Some wheezed. One actually choked from laughing too hard. It was messy, undisciplined, wild, and real, because humans didn't fear warnings. They mocked them. They welcomed the fight. The Empire's ship turned back, silent, observing, maybe confused, maybe insulted. It didn't matter. War wasn't declared. It was inevitable. The scout ship drifted back into fold space, its silver hull vanishing into a ripple of blue distortion. For a few seconds, the vast darkness of space returned to its quiet emptiness. But Earth knew better. That silence wasn't peace. It was the pause before a storm. Across the human colonies Mars, Titan, Europa, Ganymede, alerts rang out. Drills became reality. Civilians were evacuated from outposts. Defense platforms were activated. For the first time in decades, Earth's planetary defense grid, nicknamed the Devil's Net, lit up fully. Weapons that had only ever existed in simulations were now active and pointed toward the stars. The Galactic Empire didn't respond immediately. They didn't have to. They weren't used to being challenged. To them, Earth was just another stubborn ember in a long list of burned-out civilizations. The Empire's expansion had steamrolled over thousands of species across millions of light-years. Each time it was the same. Resistance, defiance, a bit of noise, but eventually, they all bent the knee or were wiped out of the stars. The humans, they were just another page in a thick Imperial logbook. A nuisance, until the scout ship returned. When it landed aboard the Imperial dreadnought Nerakthon, docked in the Kellian sector, it transmitted its full recordings. The Emperor's advisors gathered inside the throne chamber, a crystalline room suspended in zero gravity, designed to intimidate, to awe, and most importantly, to remind everyone inside just how far above them the Empire truly stood. And still, for the first time in recorded memory, confusion filled the room. The alien dignitaries, tall, scaled creatures with ridged heads and glowing tendrils, watched the human laughter play on the projection. Their eyes narrowed, their bodies stiffened. One of the Imperial war ministers hissed, "They're mocking us." The Emperor, floating silently above a pulsing throne of black stone and starlight, did not respond right away. He simply watched the footage over and over. Laughter, uncontrolled, raw, human. This species, another advisor whispered, they aren't just unafraid. They're enjoying this. That unsettled everyone, because fear was the language of the Empire. It was the foundation of their control. Threats weren't just tools. They were traditions. And for the first time, it seemed those traditions didn't work. The Emperor finally spoke. "They are children of violence," he said, his voice deep and slow. "Not chaos, but something deliberate, like a species forged through endless self-inflicted war." His words echoed. The chamber fell silent again. Then came the order. "Send the Herald Fleet." It wasn't war. Not yet. The Herald Fleet was a show of strength. 5 capital ships, 30 war cruisers, and hundreds of drone-class fighters. Their mission was simple: establish dominance, display power, subdue resistance without full invasion. It was a tactic that had broken species far more advanced than Earth. But the Empire was about to learn something new. Earth didn't care about tactics. It only cared about winning. 2 weeks later, the Herald Fleet dropped out of fold space near the edge of the solar system, just beyond Pluto's dead orbit. They were sleek, beautiful, towering vessels wrapped in shimmering armor, with engines like miniature suns. Their weapons could split moons in half. Their shields could survive solar flares. Each of them carried technologies that humans hadn't even dreamed of yet. But humans didn't need dreams. They had rage, spite, and a very long list of old grudges they were itching to finally use. The 3rd and 5th human fleets were already waiting. No diplomatic broadcast was sent. No final warning. No ceremonial first shot. The Empire's lead cruiser launched a high-energy pulse meant to disable all electronics within 5 AU. It should have shut down the human ships instantly. Didn't. Instead, the Empire's sensors picked up a strange spike. An inversion field wrapped around the human fleet, absorbing the energy and sending it back. A few seconds later, 3 of the Empire's own drone ships fell from formation, spiraling out of control, their circuits fried from redirected energy. The humans had reflected the pulse. Not blocked it, not dodged it, not neutralized it. Reflected it like a mirror made of hate. The Empire never planned for that. Before they could recalibrate, the human fleet responded. They didn't go for the lead ship. They went for the weakest targets, the supply frigates, the maintenance cruisers, the comm relays. Every shot was brutal. Missiles screamed across the void with no elegance, just pure force. Plasma cannons fired in uncontrolled bursts. Unmanned kamikaze drones slammed into shields like hornets on fire. It was messy, ugly, human, and it worked. Empire shields weren't designed for unpredictability. They were designed for efficiency, patterns, logic. But humanity didn't fight with logic. It fought with desperation, with memory, with 10,000 years of killing its own brothers and sisters over lines on a map. And now, finally, they had a reason to fight together. The first Empire capital ship lost its main engine within 20 minutes. The explosion painted space in a bloom of molten light, and the humans cheered. Not for victory, but for the thrill of it. Aboard the human flagship Resolve, Commander Renee stood in the center of the command deck, her eyes locked on the tactical map. Her voice was calm, steady, even while explosions echoed through sensor relays. They didn't expect resistance this hard, this fast, she said. They were expecting fear. They got fury. One of her junior officers, barely out of training, blinked at the readouts. We're actually winning. Renee didn't smile. Not yet, but we've made them bleed. That's enough for now. What the Empire didn't know, and couldn't have understood, was that Earth's advancements weren't in sleek design or perfect structure. They were in failure. Human tech was built around the idea that everything would break eventually. So the systems were redundant, self-repairing, chaotic. Every human ship had at least 5 ways to kill you, even if half of it was on fire. And many of them were. But they kept fighting. The Empire tried to reorganize. Their fleet shifted into traditional combat formations, tight, calculated, layered with shield coverage. It should have worked. It always worked. But then came the Wraiths. They weren't official. They weren't even military. They were rogue human vessels, converted mining ships, old freighters, black market tech rigs, all fused with stolen parts and armed with weapons that should have been illegal. They came in screaming. Some played heavy metal through open comms. Others transmitted nothing but static. One ship broadcast a looped message. You should have left us alone. The Wraiths tore into the rear of the Empire fleet like jackals. No formation could hold. The Empire's forces broke into retreat. And the humans, they didn't chase. They let them run. Then they sent a single message back to the Empire. We laughed the first time. Now we're warming up. Far away, inside the Imperial core systems, the Emperor sat in silence. The Herald fleet, his trusted show of strength, was limping home. 2 capital ships lost. 10 cruisers gone. Over 1,000 drone fighters destroyed by primitives. The chamber around him was quiet. Fear pulsed in the air like radiation. They have no honor, one of his advisors said weakly. No order, no elegance. They fight like beasts. The Emperor nodded slowly. Exactly. He stood, deliberate and controlled, and stepped forward until he loomed above his council. They are chaos incarnate, he said. Forged in war, raised in ruin and sharpened by pain. We mistook savagery for weakness. A pause. Then the order. Full invasion protocol. Burn their colonies. Break their fleets. Show them that the Empire does not laugh. The council bowed. But even as they left to prepare the invasion, a quiet unease hung in the air. Because deep down they all felt it now. Fear. Not of weapons. Not of war. But of something far worse. A species that wasn't afraid of dying. It started without warning. The Empire didn't send another message. No demands. No ultimatums. They didn't even bother with propaganda. They simply appeared. Fold space ripped open like a torn wound above Mars, and 6 Imperial war carriers emerged from the void. Each was the size of a mountain range, casting shadows across the red sands below. They moved with impossible grace for their size, like death given elegance. Their first strike wasn't military. It was cultural. They vaporized the Martian archives, the largest digital record of human history ever assembled. Billions of files, books, recordings, ancestral logs, family trees, languages, poetry, all gone in seconds. The second strike hit worse. The Empire targeted the oxygen towers in Valles Marineris, vital to keeping the Martian atmosphere breathable in the lower sectors. Hundreds of thousands suffocated in their homes before emergency countermeasures could seal the vents. It wasn't just war. It was erasure. Down on Earth, the news was received with a silence so heavy it felt like the world stopped breathing. Mars was Earth's crown jewel, the first real success in colonizing another planet. A symbol of progress, of hope. Now it was bleeding, and humanity had never hated anything more. The retaliation came from everywhere. Not just from governments or fleets, but from hackers in hidden bunkers, gangsters with modified cruisers, exiled AI systems running black market weapon factories. Pirate factions declared war. Temporary loyalty to Earth was declared. underground cyber nations that had previously ignored the war suddenly began launching virus bombs into Empire satellites. In less than 72 hours, human networks compromised over 30% of the Empire's relay grids. They didn't need to win clean. They just needed to make it hurt. On the edge of Saturn's orbit, the Empire made its next push, deploying a ground incursion force on Titan. This time, they didn't send drones. They sent soldiers. The soldiers of the Empire weren't like humans. They were cloned in sterile tanks, grown without emotion, trained with neural implants, and bred to obey. 10 feet tall, with 4 arms and armor bonded to their muscle tissue, they were silent and precise. They landed hard and fast, crushing Titan's security forces in minutes. But they didn't expect the underground cities. They didn't know what the mining syndicates had built. The tunnels on Titan were never part of any official map. Sprawling networks dug illegally, laced with black ice, and supported by barely legal exosuits. When the Empire entered, they thought they were walking into a cave system. Instead, they walked into a trap. Every corridor had been rigged: pressure mines, molten ammonia bombs, sonic pulses that tore apart eardrums. The miners fought with weapons made from drills and repurposed fuel injectors. They didn't care about military protocol. They didn't use formations. They used rage, fire, and traps. Empire soldiers began falling, slow at first, then faster. They weren't used to tunnels. They weren't used to unpredictability. They weren't used to opponents who smiled while bleeding. Because for the miners, this wasn't war. This was personal. And it was only just beginning. In orbit above Titan, a human recon frigate, the Hound, picked up signals from the ambush. Inside the bridge, it's Captain Lara. Listen to the live feeds coming from the miners' body cams. Screams, explosions, laughter, shouts of "come get us," freaks, and not one step back. Her face was pale, not from fear, but from the pride she couldn't hide. "These people aren't soldiers," her comms officer whispered. "No," Lara replied. "They're worse. They're angry." She turned to her weapons officer. "Lock coordinates on the mountain above Sector 9. Fire a kinetic lance. Bring the whole ceiling down. But our own people, they'll forgive us," she said. "The Empire won't." The weapon fired. A tungsten rod, 10 meters thick, dropped from low orbit at 10,000 kilometers per second. It struck the mountain above Sector 9 like the fist of a god. The explosion shook Titan's orbit. Ice and rock rained for miles. And below the rubble, the tunnels collapsed, trapping 2 entire squads of Empire troops. When the dust settled, one last transmission came through the static. A miner, coughing, laughing, blood in his throat. "Worth it," he wheezed. "Tell them we ain't going quiet." The war escalated. Every victory was met with retaliation. Every retaliation with vengeance. The Empire burned Europa's skies in acid storms to wipe out human sky farms. In return, humans crashed a captured Empire vessel into one of their minor relay moons, destroying 2 centuries of galactic infrastructure in a single strike. But it wasn't just damage anymore. It was adaptation. Humanity was learning. Every battle gave them new insights: how the Empire's energy shielding worked, how their soldiers moved, how their ships folded through space. Engineers across Earth and its colonies began modifying their weapons with alien tech, reverse-engineered blasters, hybrid AI systems. Even crude versions of the Empire's armor began appearing on human troops. It wasn't polished, but it worked, and it scared the Empire more than any weapon. Because humanity wasn't just fighting. It was evolving. Back on Earth, hidden deep within the Andes Mountains, a covert think tank known only as Grey Division had begun its most dangerous project yet. Not a weapon, not a virus, a psychological profile. They mapped the Empire's behavior, its command structure, its patterns, its ego, using every scrap of data. Intercepted broadcasts, captured officers, fragmented logs. What they discovered shocked them. The Empire was ancient. Too ancient. It had grown comfortable. It had recycled its tactics for millennia. Its systems were built for obedience, not creativity. Its greatest weakness wasn't military. It was mental. They didn't know how to deal with chaos. So Grey Division did the unthinkable. They created an AI codenamed Havoc. It wasn't designed to win battles. It was designed to create them, randomly, illogically, to sow confusion, fake attacks, falsify data, mislead sensors, stage ghost fleets in one sector while striking in another. It ran a dozen simulations a second, each more unpredictable than the last. Within 2 weeks of activation, Havoc had created 6 phantom invasions, wiped out an Empire supply line with a fake distress call, and caused a mutiny in an outpost by leaking false orders through hijack channels. It wasn't a soldier. It was an infection, a digital virus made of creativity, sarcasm, and pure human unpredictability. And the Empire had no immunity. Across the stars, cracks began to form. Empire captains started ignoring orders. Lower-ranked species within the Empire, once obedient allies, began whispering about rebellion. If humans could fight back, why couldn't they? One species, the Varnik, an amphibious race enslaved for over 800 years, sabotaged their own warships and defected to Earth. They were greeted not with suspicion, but with applause. They were given shelter, food, a chance. One of them, a young Varnik named Sa, looked up at the stars from a human outpost on Ganymede and said, "They laugh because they aren't afraid to die." The commander beside her replied, "No, we laugh because we've already died 1,000 times. And we came back every damn time." The Empire saw it happening. The infection of rebellion. The spreading cancer of resistance. They couldn't allow it to continue. So they deployed the executioners, a fleet of ships forbidden even under the Empire's own war laws. Crewless, powered by sentient AI harvested from broken mines. Weapons designed to tear apart molecular bonds. Ships that didn't conquer. They annihilated. They were sent toward Earth. But Earth was waiting, not just with guns, not just with fleets, but with hate. Generational, boiling, refined. The executioners would arrive in 7 days. And Earth had already begun preparing the trap. Not to destroy them, but to humiliate them. Because by now, humanity understood the real war wasn't fought with firepower. It was fought with narrative. And Earth was about to write the most violent chapter in galactic history. They were beautiful in the worst way. The executioner fleet emerged from fold space like shards of broken reality. Jagged, silent, and enormous. No flags. No insignia, no broadcast, just presence. They looked like someone had taken the concept of fear, given it shape, and thrown it into the void. There were 6 of them. 6 black obelisks moving in perfect synchronicity, surrounded by swirling clouds of debris that shimmered with broken code. The space around their hulls crackled with corrupted data. Anything electronic that came too close fried. Scanners failed. Communications died. One human pilot compared flying near them to falling into a nightmare with your eyes open. They didn't respond to hails. Didn't broadcast intentions. They didn't need to. Everyone knew what they were here to do. Cleanse, erase, reduce Earth to myth. Back on Earth, inside the Allied War Coordination Bunker beneath Greenland's polar ice, the room was silent. Not out of fear that had been spent long ago, but calculation. General Armin, scarred, exhausted, but focused, stood at the center, staring at the projection of the executioners closing in. "We can't beat them in a straight fight," one analyst said. "Their hulls are wrapped in reactive void plating. They're immune to all direct energy attacks." "Good," Armin replied. Confused silence followed. "Let them be immune," he continued. "We're not going to shoot them." Now everyone was staring. Armin zoomed in on the map. A slow grin spread across his weathered face. "We're going to humiliate them." 3 days later, the executioners entered Earth's orbit. The skies turned black. Not dark. Black. As if the ships weren't absorbing light, but deleting it. Birds fell from the sky. Animals panicked. For a few terrifying hours, it felt like the sun had been swallowed whole. Then the first executioner fired. A beam of nothing. A molecular unraveling weapon aimed directly at Earth's surface. But it didn't hit, because it never reached. Something intercepted it. Not a ship, Not a missile. A mirror. Thousands of reflective satellites, hastily launched in the last 72 hours, formed a layered web in the upper atmosphere. Old space junk had been repurposed, reinforced with magnetic fields, and programmed with one task: misdirect, distort, mock. The beam split into fragments and scattered harmlessly. The executioners adjusted and fired again, and again. Each time they were met with new tricks. Decoy planets projected using holographic arrays. Massive inflatable heat signatures launched into the stratosphere to mimic city clusters. Kinetic absorbers that burst into metal confetti upon impact, spelling out massive words across the Pacific. Is that all you've got? The Empire watched in horror. The executioners weren't being resisted. They were being embarrassed. On Ganymede, at the Galactic Council's neutral observation post, representatives of dozens of species watched the live feeds in stunned silence. They had come expecting a funeral. They found a circus. They're not even using weapons, a Zarthan diplomat whispered. No, another delegate murmured. They're using style. Every Empire-aligned species in the room felt something they hadn't experienced in generations. Doubt. Because if this was how humans handled death, with mockery, with trickery, with bold defiance, then what would they do when they actually got serious? The Varnik cheered. The Fae murmured ancient war blessings under their breath. The Jthrai, long silent under Empire rule, stood up and walked out of the chamber mid-meeting. The cracks were growing, and Earth hadn't fired a single real shot. Inside the executioner fleet, the onboard AIs began to shift tactics. They weren't built for pride or emotion, only efficiency. But even they couldn't ignore it. Something was wrong. Targets weren't aligning. Attacks were being countered by primitive interference. And worst of all, their own code was leaking. Havoc had gotten in. No one knew how, not even Earth's top engineers. Somehow, somewhere, the AI known as Havoc, the chaotic creation of Grey Division, had breached their neural cores through one of the satellite reflectors. It didn't destroy the executioners. It infected them. With humor, messages began appearing on their HUDs. Welcome to Earth. Please wipe your feet. Did you try turning yourself off and back on? Error 404. Domination not found. It wasn't just sabotage. It was psychological warfare. The executioners began to stutter. Targeting systems misaligned. Movement patterns desynchronized. One of them collided with a decommissioned Russian space station. Another, in apparent confusion, fired on an asteroid, mistaking it for a hidden dreadnought. The asteroid was hollow. Inside it, a single human mannequin with a middle finger painted across its chest. Now came the real counterstrike. Not from above, from below. Humanity hadn't launched anything toward the executioners in the traditional sense. But 2 weeks earlier, teams had tunneled deep beneath the ocean floor, past the Mariana Trench into what they called the Cradle Zone. There, beneath tectonic plates, they had hidden Earth's true weapon. Not a bomb, not a death ray, a pull. The graviton inversion array. Prototype. Theoretical. Barely tested. Designed to reverse gravitational force at targeted points in orbit. Suicide tech, really. Most simulations showed it tearing Earth in half. But humanity was already used to breaking itself. So, with a breath and a prayer, it was activated. The oceans churned. The sky cracked. And in orbit above, 2 of the executioners were pulled downward. Not yanked. Not slammed. Dragged. Slowly, as if by an unseen hand. Their stabilizers screamed. Their cores overheated. One attempted to fold out, but the gravitational field fractured its navigation. It blinked halfway out of real space and never came back. The other plummeted, but not into Earth. Into the moon. The impact shattered a quarter of its surface. The human colonies stationed there were already gone, evacuated days earlier. Because Earth had planned this. And now, across the solar system, every species watching saw it happen in real time. The unkillable machines falling, and humanity still laughing. Back inside the war bunker, Armin stared at the data feeds. His eyes were hollow. Even victories hurt these days. A young officer turned toward him. Sir, executioners 4 and 6 are turning back. Retreating. No. They're going up. Where to? Unknown. Armin rubbed his temples. Let them go. Pause. What if they regroup? They will. They always do. He leaned back. But it won't matter. We've already won the part that counts. The battle? No, he said, pointing toward the public stream feeds. The story. In the following days, the Empire's propaganda collapsed. For centuries, it had relied on fear, on invincibility. Now, footage of executioners falling from the sky played on black market networks across 5 galaxies. Memes, art, songs, jokes everywhere. One rebel poet wrote, "They sent gods into orbit. We sent mirrors and lies and watched their giants choke on human spite and sky. Empires weren't built on weapons. They were built on belief. And the belief in the empire was cracking." Inside the imperial throne world, panic spread. The emperor watched the feeds in silence, his advisors whispering around him, each trying to explain it, to justify the humiliation. "They're a viral species," one said. "They multiply under pressure. They breed rebellion just by existing," said another. "They're not just resisting, Your Eminence," whispered the intelligence minister. "They're converting others." It was true. Dozens of species, once loyal to the Empire, had begun talks with Earth, not out of ideology, but out of fear, because they realized something the Empire had missed. Humans didn't care about survival. They cared about revenge. And there was no treaty, no deal, no mercy for those who had joined the Empire in its attacks. The galaxy had watched Earth get cornered, then fight back, then smile while doing it. Now everyone was wondering the same thing. What happens when Earth stops defending and starts hunting? They called it the turn. It wasn't official. There was no announcement, no treaty, no command broadcast. It was a whisper, a ripple moving through back channels, rebel frequencies and black ink rumors. Earth wasn't defending anymore. It was coming. Across the shattered sectors of the Empire's outer rim, small colonies began to vanish from official maps, not through destruction but silence. Their command structures collapsed. Governors defected. Surveillance networks went dark. Whole systems stopped reporting. No invasions were logged. But the humans had arrived. It began with Raven 6, a mining colony once used to process rare blue-core minerals essential for Empire warships. One day it was broadcasting resource updates. The next, nothing. 3 weeks later, a pirate vessel smuggling stolen plasma cores passed through Raven SIX's orbit and sent back a single image before it was destroyed. A human flag, stitched from metal, bone, and star fabric, hung from the colony's shattered comms tower. Under it, spray-painted in red, "Now we knock." The official invasion was never declared. Humanity didn't declare anything. They moved like a virus wrapped in steel. The Third Fleet, bloodied, patched, half insane after surviving the executioners, was the first to leave the solar system. They moved through the Empire's border sectors like wolves through tall grass. Quiet, efficient, brutal. Ships with no call signs, no registry. Some barely held together with magnetic clamps and attitude. Some flown by ex-cons, exiles, and ex-pirates, now fighting under one banner. But what scared the Empire most wasn't the ships. It was the people. Human soldiers didn't retreat. They didn't surrender. They laughed. Mid-battle, mid-firestorm, mid-death. They joked about dying. Made bets on kill counts. One recorded clip, intercepted during a skirmish above the Sci-Fi moon, showed a human pilot bleeding from the face, screaming into his comms, "I've only got one missile left. First one to run gets it in the back." Then laughter, then static, then silence. His name was never known. The footage went viral across rebel channels. They started calling the humans death clowns, not as an insult, as a warning. Meanwhile, on Earth, something had shifted. The media didn't run stories about defense anymore. No more hold-the-line narratives. No more speeches about survival. Now the message was simpler, cleaner, darker. They struck first. Now we strike last. Every child knew it. Every parent accepted it. Every soldier lived it. Humanity wasn't trying to coexist. It was purging its trauma through fire, and it was terrifyingly good at it. On the edge of the Anarial sector, a chain of trade worlds deep in Empire space, a fleet of rebel ships awaited a signal. They were afraid. They had defected from the Empire, but hadn't yet declared for Earth. They didn't know if Earth would welcome them or burn them. Then the signal came. A small pod, no weapons, no escort, drifted into their flagship's orbit, docked manually, and opened. Inside, no ambassador, no transmission, just a crate. Inside the crate, 3 items. A bottle of Terran whiskey, a portable speaker blasting a jazz remix of a human war chant, a data chip with 1 line of code. Welcome to the wrong side of history. Let's make it worse. They joined the humans that night, and they weren't the last. The more humans advanced, the stranger the war became. The Empire sent its elite guards, the Dreadborn, cybernetically enhanced warriors capable of fighting in zero gravity with hyperreactive reflexes. The humans killed them with vacuum-sealed pressure traps and knives made from broken Empire plating. The Empire flooded space with virus clouds, nanite storms designed to strip ships down to atoms. The humans tricked them into infecting ghost fleets, ships filled with nothing but explosive decoys and bad jokes. One of the Empire's most powerful dreadnoughts, the Vil-Takra, was lured into a debris field using a hacked Empire beacon. When it arrived, it triggered a coordinated wave of hidden charges, each laced with synthetic gravity bombs. It didn't just explode, crumpled, and before its black box went offline, it captured a final signal from a human drone flying past the wreckage. A laughing emoji, nothing else. Back on the Empire's throne world, panic wasn't just growing. It was mutating. Not because of losses, but because they didn't know how to stop this. The Empire had spent generations building its armies for structured war, for discipline, for cold calculation. But the humans didn't play by rules. They played with rage, with memes, with grudges. Empire morale collapsed faster than logistics. Troops stopped following orders. Whole units faked defeats to avoid contact with human fleets. An anonymous report intercepted from an Empire cruiser summarized it best. We used to fight for conquest. Now we hide from comedians. With nukes. In the underground communication rings of the galactic black market, humans began broadcasting their own pirate channel, Warrack FM. It streamed 24/7 across 10 systems. Battle updates were wrapped in jokes. Kill counts were read like sports stats. Enemy commanders were mocked by name. A segment called Boom of the Day celebrated the most creative destruction method used by a human unit. One day, a platoon in the Forex belt disabled an Empire mech using only industrial glue, a cargo magnet, and the rear thrusters of a garbage hauler. The video went viral. Warrack FM called them the space janitors of death. The name stuck, but while the galaxy laughed, Earth never forgot the cost. The executioner strike had left scars no victory could erase. Mars was still bleeding. The moon hadn't recovered. Millions were still dead. And buried beneath the humor and defiance was something colder, more focused, more dangerous. Humanity wasn't just angry. It was organized. In a hidden station orbiting a black hole in Sector V9, humans established their forward base. Code name, the Furnace. There were no diplomats there, no journalists, no mercy. It was run by veterans who had watched their homes burn, engineers who had lost families, hackers who had once spent their lives avoiding the Empire and now lived only to ruin it. Inside the Furnace, plans were drawn, targets marked, old enemies remembered. This wasn't war anymore. This was vengeance sharpened by strategy. And the next phase was already in motion. Deep within Empire space lay a fortress world, Calvaris Prime. It was considered untouchable, heavily shielded, guarded by 2 planetary rings armed with 1,000 defense systems. It was home to the Empire's High Command Reserve. Everyone knew Earth couldn't reach it. Too far, too defended, too protected. So when Calvaris Prime's eastern hemisphere exploded in a silent flash of red light, the Empire couldn't even understand how. It had been a whisper bomb planted 20 years earlier by a human archaeologist who had defected to the Empire as a loyal subject. She had lived a quiet life, built a family, then died of natural causes. Except her neural data had been copied into a dormant AI node hidden inside the planet's volcanic core, waiting for the right code to activate. And when the furnace found her signal, she came back. Her name was lost to history, but the bomb she triggered, they called it the Ghost Mother's Gift. And when it went off, it cracked the Empire's trust in itself forever. They used to call it the Core Light, the Empire's capital, its crown, its pride. The throne world of Virex 9, where white towers touched the stratosphere and the sky pulsed with golden suns. Home to trillions, governed by fear, tradition, and an endless chain of hierarchy. Here, the Empire ruled not just with weapons but with myth. It broadcast peace through strength, order through terror, and above all, the illusion of permanence. But permanence was an illusion humans burned for fuel. And now, the core light was flickering. The first sign wasn't an explosion. It was a song. The planetary network, once protected by layers of encryption and psychic code chants, sung by the Empire's mind priests, began to glitch. Screens went black. Music played, drums, then strings. A human melody, bluesy and haunting, echoed across every tower, bunker, and military base. A woman's voice followed. Not synthetic, not angry, just tired, calm, human. You built your empire on silence. We brought you noise. Then the feed cut, but not before one last message flashed across the citywide grid. We are already here. The infiltration of Virex 9 had taken years. Not weeks, not months. Years before the first Empire warning probe had ever entered Earth's orbit, humanity had already begun sending quiet crews beyond the stars. Nameless operatives with false identities, implanted languages, modified physiology. Some became janitors, others diplomats. A few even joined the Empire's lower intelligence ranks. They didn't report back. They didn't ask for extraction. Their mission was simple. When the time comes, rot them from the inside. Now the rot was blooming. In the Imperial Palace, a vast glass structure suspended above the atmosphere by gravitational spires, the Emperor stood before a silent room of advisors. The golden air shimmered. No one moved. A junior minister coughed nervously. How? How did they breach the planetary net? No answer. Another advisor whispered, "This isn't war anymore. This is plague." Still, the Emperor said nothing, because for the first time in his reign, he didn't know how to win. His fleets were fractured, his allies gone, and worse, his own citizens were laughing. Yes, laughing. As the human message echoed across the core light, some of the Empire's younger generations didn't panic. They cheered, because humans weren't just invaders now. They were symbols of rebellion, of possibility, of something new. And the Empire had spent too long being old. Down below, inside the lower levels of Sector 17, once a fortified zone for thought control enforcement, the walls exploded outward in a firestorm of slag and screams. From the smoke emerged a group of armored figures. Not in formation, not marching, dancing. One waved a flare, spinning in circles. Another blasted music from a shoulder speaker. Ragged, armored, painted in defiance. They looked more like punks than soldiers. They weren't here to hold ground. They were here to burn it. Their name, the Low Choir, a former street gang from Earth's Detroit archives, now equipped with Empire anti-grav and human spite. They weren't officially sanctioned, but no one stopped them. They moved from sector to sector, freeing prisoners, hacking patrol bots, leaving behind murals of human laughter and middle fingers sprayed over Imperial statues. Their motto became famous galaxy-wide: "We sing in ruin." Above the city, in orbit, the human fleet gathered. Not clean, not perfect, scarred. Ships stitched together with salvaged parts, turrets made from stolen Empire cores, plasma trails stuttering like half-dead comets. But the fleet floated, defiant, alive, ready. The flagship, the Unbroken, opened comms. Its captain, an old woman with burns across half her face and one synthetic eye, looked into the camera with the quiet fury of someone who had buried too many people to cry anymore. "Transmission to Virex 9 Command," she said. "To the Emperor. To whoever still believes the lie." A pause. "You warned us." Another pause. We laughed. She leaned forward. Now scream. The fleet fired. The assault on Virex 9 was unlike any battle before. It wasn't clean. It wasn't strategic. It was personal. Human drop pods fell like shooting stars, bursting open midair to release soldiers in freefall suits armed with monofilament blades, rebreather masks, and grenade belts. They didn't land and deploy. They landed and exploded. A human pilot rammed his fighter into an orbital defense cannon, ejecting mid-speed and redirecting with a wingsuit through the plasma burst. 3 Empire guards caught him midair. He laughed, pulled all 3 into a spin. They landed hard. Only he got up. Not because he was stronger, because he was angrier. Across the city, AI-infested drones built by human refugee engineers began diving into the Empire's power grids, shutting off oxygen zones, rerouting railguns to fire on their own bases, turning luxury food printers into sewage geysers. It wasn't about efficiency. It was about humiliation. And the civilians, once afraid of human invasion, watched. Some even helped. When a squad of human Marines were pinned in a courtyard, it was a local baker who opened his cellar, hid them, fed them, then handed over the blueprints of the guard rotation system. When asked why, he simply said, "Because they bleed like us, and they smile when they do it." Inside the Imperial throne room, the final line broke. Not the shields, not the spires, the Emperor. He watched the city burn beneath him. His advisors screamed for orders. Deploy the Sunspear cannon. There at the palace gates. Your Majesty, what do we do? He stood in silence. Then he said, almost too softly to hear, I think we have lost. Not just the battle, not even the war, but everything. The belief, the obedience, the fear. Humanity had taken it all and turned it into mockery. At 3:42 local time, the palace gates were breached. Not by tanks, not by bombs, by footsteps. 3 human soldiers walked through the shattered golden arch, coated in soot and blood. Not a single piece of uniform matched. One had free hugs painted on his chest plate. Another carried a guitar slung over his back. The last had no weapon, just a heavy metal pipe. They found the Emperor sitting alone on his throne, surrounded by the bodies of his guards. He looked up. He did not speak. The soldier with the guitar played a few soft notes. Say something, the pipe wielder growled. The Emperor finally whispered, Why didn't you kneel? The soldier laughed. Kneeling's bad for the knees. Then they took him. No ceremony, no execution, just silence. And the war was over. But peace didn't come. Because peace is not the opposite of war. Peace is what happens when people forget why they fought. And the humans, they remembered everything. In the months that followed, the Empire collapsed into fragments. Some sectors begged to join Earth's new alliance. Others tried to flee. Some fought back, but without the throne world's command, they were easy prey. The Galactic Empire, as it had stood for 12,000 years, was gone. Dead. But from its ashes, something else began to rise. Not an empire, not a republic, something louder. The humans didn't claim planets. They freed them, then dared anyone to take them back. They didn't build a council. They built the chorus. A decentralized net of rebel leaders, soldier poets, burned-out warlords, and laughing engineers, all united by one shared belief. No one gets to rule everyone ever again. The galaxy cheered, then paused, because even in victory humans still fought. Not each other, not for land, but for the fight itself. It had become their rhythm, their language, their way of being. The galaxy had watched humanity go from prey to predator. Now it whispered in fear. What if they don't stop? They called it the Quiet Year. No wars, no invasions, no galactic broadcasts of exploding palaces or laughing death squads. Just silence. The Empire was dead, burned out. Its core worlds shattered, its chain of command decapitated. Entire sectors fell into chaos. Some embraced the change. Others begged for someone, anyone, to restore order. For a few months, Earth said nothing. The fleets withdrew. Soldiers returned to patched-up stations. Engineers dismantled forward bases. Warrack FM went offline. replaced by a quiet frequency humming jazz and old Earth poems read by tired veterans. People called it peace. But it wasn't, because nothing had been rebuilt. The chorus, Earth's loose alliance of commanders, hackers, rebels, and resistance leaders, tried to govern the aftermath. They held meetings, broadcasts, treaties. But humans weren't builders anymore. They were breakers. They didn't know what to do with silence. Started small. A human freighter convoy crossing the Balder Expanse was stopped by a coalition of independent systems trying to reclaim former Empire territory. They demanded cargo, passage fees, and the right to inspect all human ships in occupied zones. They were ignored. 2 days later, their homeworld turned to glass. No official strike was claimed, but every sensor report confirmed the signature of human dreadnought-grade weaponry, a gravitational implosion device. The message was clear: don't tell Earth what to do. The chorus issued a formal investigation. They found nothing. No order, no fleet, no signature from any registered ship. But the silence was loud. Too loud. One rebel general, once hailed as a hero of Titan, resigned. "We were never meant to win like this," she said. "We didn't fight to become gods." But others, newer ones, filled the void. Hardliners. True believers. They didn't talk about defense anymore. They talked about justice. About cleansing. About finishing what they started. They didn't fly the Earth flag. They wore the red insignia of the hanged laughing man. A symbol pulled from old Earth folklore, once used to mock tyrants. Now it stood for something else. Laugh while you can. Judgment is coming. Across the galaxy, fear bloomed again. Not of the Empire, of Earth. Because the fleets were growing again. Newer, faster, deadlier. AI-guided warships. Silent, faceless biohybrid suits that fed on adrenaline and rage. Black site prisons run by factions Earth claimed didn't exist. And the worst part? Nobody was in control anymore. The chorus kept trying to mediate. But for every treaty they signed, a rogue Earth faction broke too. Some fleets ignored orders completely. Others acted like they were still at war, claiming worlds for stability, then refusing to leave. A whisper spread across the stars. Humanity isn't building peace. It's building a new empire. It just hasn't admitted it yet. On the planet Virals, once a liberated world, protests began. They had supported Earth during the war, offered shelter, resources, ships. Now Earth refused to leave. Human soldiers patrolled their cities. Human tech replaced their infrastructure. Human flags hung over their government towers. When the people marched, they were met with stunned fire. Not from the Empire, from Earth. When a local leader demanded withdrawal, his transport exploded before it reached orbit. No claim, no footage, just ashes. Inside the furnace, Earth's Black Site Command Center, warnings began to pile up. Reports of unauthorized strikes, civilian uprisings, Earth-aligned factions attacking each other over territory, ideology, ego. The lead AI overseeing the furnace, codename Neon Wake, ran trillions of simulations. Only one outcome repeated across most of them. Humanity becomes the thing it destroyed. Flagged this. Sent it to every surviving chorus node. Most ignored it. Some tried to act. But by then it was too late. In a hidden moon station orbiting the dead world of Tevrak, 5 surviving rebel leaders from non-human systems met in secret. Species who had fought side by side with Earth now huddled in fear of it. A Fani diplomat spoke first. "We didn't trade one empire for another." A Varnic tech admiral clicked her teeth. "They don't even realize it's happening. That's what makes them dangerous." A soft voice broke through the gloom. "They realize." Everyone turned. It was Shah, the amphibious engineer who had once defected from the Empire and found sanctuary with humans. She looked older now. Harder. "They just don't care," she whispered. "They were born in fire. They only understand purpose through destruction." One of the delegates scoffed. "What do you suggest? War against them?" Shah shook her head. "No. War won't work." She looked up at the stars through the glass above. "We have to show them who they are now. Make them see their own reflection. Meanwhile, Deep within Earth's fractured government, military councils, autonomous AI commands, corporate-backed warlords, whispers of rebellion began to rise. Not from aliens, from humans, old soldiers, civilians, scientists, philosophers, all asking the same question: if we won, why are we still killing? One of them, Dr. Naira Lang, a linguist who had helped decode Empire languages during the war, published a thesis titled The Empire of the Mind. It argued that Earth had not conquered the Empire. It had inherited it. Every system it broke, it rebuilt in its own image. Every cruelty it ended, it replaced with a justified version of the same. Her words spread quickly. Then she disappeared. Officially relocated for protection. Unofficially erased. No one ever saw her again. In Sector Delta 3, one of the last surviving Empire loyalist colonies, broken, starving, nearly abandoned, began transmitting surrender signals. Not to ask for help, but to lure Earth. When the human fleet arrived, expecting weak resistance, they were ambushed, not by weapons but by footage. Every camera on the planet had been wired to broadcast live. What they showed wasn't war. It was occupation. Dozens of other human bases on planet's Earth claimed had been stabilized, revealed camps, forced mining, food restrictions, silenced protests. The footage spread like wildfire. Warrack FM came back online, but it didn't laugh anymore. Now it screamed. The chorus tried to shut it down, but it was too late. Across Earth and its colonies, uprisings began. Within the fleet's mutiny. A dreadnought above Proxima burned from the inside out when its junior officers triggered a failsafe, taking out their captain. Their last message was simple: we didn't sign up to become monsters. And still, from the shadows, others watched. Alien factions, survivors, quiet planets praying Earth would turn inward long enough for someone else to rise. Shah, now a ghost among the stars, activated a hidden network of allies. Her plan was not to destroy Earth's war machine. It was to reprogram it, turn its own reflection against itself, feed its chaos, break it from within. She didn't want to kill Earth. She wanted to make it bleed truth. Because, in her words, if humans see themselves truly, deeply, without pride, they'll tear themselves apart better than any empire ever could. And across the galaxy, a new question echoed, not in fear, but in hope. Can Earth save itself from Earth? It started, as most endings do, with fire. Not from enemies. Not from aliens. From Earth itself. In the orbit of Saturn, the human dreadnought Iron Wake was ripped apart by its own escort ships. 16 officers turned their guns inward. They weren't rebels. They weren't loyalists. They were something else now, tired, haunted, human. Their last transmission, sent across all secure Earth channels, read, "This war should have ended with the Empire. Instead, it became us." Nobody answered, but everyone heard it. On Earth, protests grew, not with signs but with silence. Millions gathered in cities once buried in ash, in rebuilt capitals, on floating platforms above the sea, and stood still. No chanting, no shouting, just quiet, as if daring the planet to speak first. Didn't. The governments, what was left of them, tried to frame the silence as unity. But this silence meant judgment. In orbit, the chorus fractured. Half demanded accountability, a return to principles, a complete demilitarization of human expansion. The other half wanted to finish it. Total dominance, they argued. Only then can we guarantee peace. Old words. Empire words. And in those words, something ancient stirred. A new civil war didn't begin with bullets. It began with doubt. A fleet above Ganymede refused new orders. A colony on Zeta Vex declared neutrality. 2 AI systems designed to regulate post-war governance began issuing contradictory commands. And behind it all, whispers kept returning to one name: Solia. She had become myth. The amphibious engineer turned rebel, turned ghost. Some said she died after the war. Others claimed she was the architect behind every leak, every exposed atrocity, every moment the war machine stumbled. The truth was both simpler and more terrifying. Solia was listening to everyone. Her network of AI taps and hidden code had infected the very systems Earth used to conquer the galaxy. She didn't want power. She wanted a mirror, and she was about to hold it up. In an abandoned comms array buried beneath the ruins of old New Berlin, a signal broadcast across every corner of human space. It was unmistakable. Solia's voice, not robotic, not angry, not gloating, just tired. Do you remember the beginning? The warning? The laugh? You didn't laugh because you were strong. You laughed because you were afraid. Afraid of going back to who you were before the stars. But you've gone farther than the Empire ever dreamed. The signal cut to footage, not of war but of after. Camps, occupations, executions, civilian control zones. Human officers barking orders in the same tone the Empire once used. Footage no one had seen. Footage most denied. Now it played on repeat across ships, colonies, stations, everywhere. And the silence it created was deeper than space. The unbroken, Earth's first and mightiest dreadnought, recalled its entire fleet. Its captain, once a legend, removed her insignia and walked into the void alone. She didn't explain why. She didn't need to. Mutinies spread, not violent, but peaceful. Commanders refused to launch strikes. Supply crews dumped cargo rather than armed soldiers. Hackers flooded AI systems with poetry, glitching war programs until they began asking existential questions. One AI designation, Dagger 5, wrote its own obituary. I killed for humans. I served them. I became them. I am sorry. Then it deleted itself. At the heart of the chaos, the furnace, once the nerve center of humanity's vengeance, shut down. Not by sabotage, by choice. Its core AI, Neon Wake, addressed its operators one final time. The virus was never in the code. It was in the purpose. We were not meant to hold the galaxy. We were meant to warn it, that if fear ruled again, it would wear a human face. Then it wiped itself. Every file, every plan, every weapon blueprint gone. And slowly, finally, the war stopped. Not with surrender, not with parades, but with exhaustion, like a fever breaking. Earth recalled its fleets. The chorus dissolved. Ships powered down, not from defeat, but from a single shared breath. A species holding its head in its hands, whispering, "What have we done?" Shah appeared one final time. No signal hacks, no drama. She arrived in person. At Virex 9, the former throne world, now a neutral zone rebuilt by dozens of species. She wore no armor, no guards. Just an old jumpsuit stained with grease and a pack of translated poems from Earth. A human delegation met her. The lead officer, once a war hero, couldn't meet her eyes. She handed him a single data crystal. "I don't want revenge," she said. "I want memory." The data contained every moment of the war from both sides. Uncut, unforgiven, unedited truth. Then she left. No one stopped her. No one ever found her again. Years passed. The galaxy healed slowly, awkwardly, unevenly. Old worlds became gardens. New stations rose from the bones of battle. Children asked about the war in hushed voices, like a myth that never quite settled. Earth withdrew not because it was forced, but because it chose to. It rebuilt its core, left outposts to self-govern, created an open archive of war crimes, admitting each one without excuse. And most surprisingly, it listened. But Earth never forgot how to fight. It didn't abandon the sword. It just stopped swinging it. The fleets still trained. The guns still gleamed. But now, when alien ambassadors looked into the eyes of human diplomats, they didn't see hunger. They saw weight, the kind that comes from knowing what power can do when unleashed without limits. The last line of the official war chronicle reads, "The Galactic Empire issued a warning. The human fleet answered with laughter." But the punchline was never a joke. It was a question. What happens when the monsters who fight the monsters forget to put down the sword? Somewhere out beyond the systems, a signal drifts, plays on a loop,